Coming to you from the Deep South, this is the Blue Collar Leadership Podcast. High-impact leadership is not reserved for leaders, and it has nothing to do with your position, title, or rank. However, it does have everything to do with your character. It's time to climb to the next level and beyond, personally and professionally. Now, let's start making it happen with your host, Mack Story.
Hello, and thanks for listening to the Blue Collar Leadership Podcast. Today we're on part 8 of my 30-part series on my book, Blue Collar Leadership and Culture, the 5 components for building high-performance teams. So we're still in the leadership development section related to the transformation equation. The leadership development component was the first of the 5 components that we're talking about. Still in that section. Today we're on Chapter 8. Chapter 8 is titled Leading, Following, and Managing. And you see, the subtitle kind of explains it simply. Everyone is a leader. Everyone is a follower. Everyone is a manager. The top leader needs to understand this so that people can be developed as leaders, as followers, and as managers. Because everyone feels those roles every day. And I'm going to talk to you about that in a minute. A lot of times people think the only person who is a leader is the formal authority leaders, the bosses, the managers. They're leaders, but so are the folks on the front lines. They're leaders too, because remember last time we talked about the one-word definition of leadership. Leadership is influence. Everybody has it. So I want to start off today sharing a quote by Coach John Wooden. And Coach Wooden says, "I believe ability can get you to the top, but it takes character to keep you there." Pretty strong statement by Coach Wooden. And that's what we're talking about. You're talking about transforming the culture. You're talking about developing the character of the people within the organization. We talk about leadership as influence. Don't miss this point. Influence can be positive, which is what I'm focused on, or it can be negative. There's a lot of people with a lot of negative influence. Think about dictators. Think about bad bosses. They have a lot of negative influence. Even though the majority of it is artificial. It comes with their position or title. When you control someone's pay and you control their time off, you control if they get off early on Friday to go see their kids' football game out of town or something like that. You control if they get promoted, things like that. You have a lot of artificial influence over people. But only because they give it to you. They get tired of giving it to you, they fire you, go find a new leader. That's what we call quitting, right? That's how you know you have artificial influence. People don't have to come back tomorrow. Let's say in the military. We talked about that a little bit. They don't have to re-enlist. They can move on. If they've had a bad experience, even in the military, it's a little bit delayed, but at some point they can choose to move on. And often it's because of the leadership they've been under during their military time. Sometimes they re-enlist purely because of the leadership that they've been under. So let's think about it again. Everyone has influence. However, the amount of influence each person has varies greatly. A person may have a lot of influence in one area and no influence in another area. Or they may have a lot of influence with one person and no influence with another person on the same team. And as a leader, whether you've had leadership development training or been reading, developing yourself or not, you can validate if you've got a team of people, there's some people you're going to have more influence than others. The ones you have more influence with, that's where you have authentic influence. The ones you have less influence with, that's where you don't have authentic influence. If someone's on your team, you've got the artificial influence that comes with your title and position. They do what they have to do to keep their job. They follow to the degree that they have to, but they don't do more than they have to. They don't do what they could do if they actually wanted to follow. So that's where the influence, that's where you can actually see the difference between artificial influence and authentic influence. And you can tell it with your children, especially teenagers. If you've got several children, you may know one child you may not have very much influence with while they're a teenager. Other children, you may have a lot of influence with. The ones you have a lot of influence with, you have authentic influence as a parent. The one you didn't have much influence with, all you had was artificial influence. Like with me, with my son, when he quit talking to me at age 15, when I got it all wrong, he found out after he got old enough to make his own decision that he was going to go live with his mom and not have anything to do with me. That's when I found out I really didn't have any influence. The influence I had up to that point was all artificial because I was dad. He followed me because he had to. As soon as he didn't have to, he didn't anymore. But thankfully, I discovered this leadership content 2 years later. Then it took me another 2 years before I even had the first chance to start rebuilding the relationship. But I did it. And today, 10 years later, he's 29. And so when he was 19, started rebuilding a relationship. And it actually happened pretty rapidly because of all of the 2 years prior that I had been learning and developing myself. But life's great. We talk all the time because he wants to talk to me, not because he has to talk to me. So you start helping your team have a better life at work and at home. And again, especially at home, they want to follow you. They want to talk positively about the organization. They're going to provide good, positive word of mouth advertisement. So again, let's talk about this. Everyone influences others at some level. Therefore, everyone is a leader. And leaders have followers. Remember, and you already know this, you may know the team of frontline, entry-level people in your organization. No one is the boss of anyone else. They're all frontline, entry-level people. But I guarantee you, one of them is the leader of that group, meaning the one with the most influence. Whoever has the most influence in the group, in general, is the leader of the group. It may or may not be the boss, but there's always one among the peer level group. It even happens with supervisors. If you got 10 supervisors at the same level, one of them has tremendous influence with the entire group compared to the other ones. Doesn't mean everybody follows them, but there's one that stands out with the most influence. Those are the leaders. You can see a group of children, a group of 5-year-olds. One of them has more influence than all the other ones. That one is the leader of the group. And again, leadership changes. At any age, something may change, and one person may be seen as the leader at this moment. Something changes, or we need a different skill set. Someone else is seen as the leader. That's why leadership is so dynamic. The important thing to know is everyone is a leader. You got to understand this. If you're the top leader, you've got to understand everyone is a leader. If you don't, you won't develop everyone as a leader. But you probably already wish they would lead themselves well. You wish they would take responsibility. Parents wish this about their children. Bosses wish it about their team. Individual team members. And it doesn't matter. It could be a C-level leader wishing, the CEO could be wishing that some of the C-level leaders and executives and VPs would lead themselves better. They understand they're leaders, but they still wish they would lead themselves better. But it's the same principle down on the front lines. The boss wished their team would lead themselves better, but yet most of them don't teach them leadership, personal growth and development, all the fundamentals related to leading yourself well. But then leaders have followers, as I mentioned. Followers choose leaders. I'm talking about people who voluntarily follow a leader. That's what a follower is. Someone who follows you because they have to, those people are workers. People who follow you because they want to, they're actually authentic followers. They're following you because of who you are. So we talk about everyone influences others at some level, so everyone is a leader. But also, everyone is being influenced by others. All of us, people are influencing us all day long, no matter who we are, no matter what level we're at. The CEO or business owner is influenced by people all day. Therefore, everyone is also a follower. The CEO or the business owner, yes, they're a leader, but they're also a follower. They follow other people. And followers choose leaders. Most business owners and CEOs, they ask a lot of questions. As soon as they ask a question, they're transferring influence to the person who's going to answer the question. As soon as I ask a question, I'm saying, let me see if I want to follow you. I ask you a question. That's basically me saying, let me see if I want to follow you. And then you having a chance to influence me. If you tell me a good answer, especially an answer that I hadn't thought of, but I should have thought of, or I wish I would have thought of, and I take your information and I apply it or make a decision based on it, you're influencing me. That means I'm following you. Everyone is a follower. Everyone is a leader. The best followers make the best leaders. The best leaders make the best followers. They're one and the same. And then the other component, everyone must also manage things and processes at some level. Therefore, everyone is a manager. And if you read my book, I mentioned it to you last time, Defining Influence. I go in depth talking about the difference between leadership and management. And if you download that free chapter I was talking about, go to bluecollarleadership.com/download. Download the free chapter of Defining Influence. It's chapter 11. And you'll see the difference between, I think there's a 17-part section in there in that chapter where I talk about the difference between managing versus leading. And I compare and contrast different components to help you understand the difference of how a manager thinks about people and how a leader thinks about people. Because management of people is low impact leadership. We must manage things and processes, but we should lead people. The key word is should, because we have an option of managing people. And people who do not know how to lead people, they don't have a choice except to manage people. People don't like to be managed. They like to be led. So regardless of our title, position, or rank, we are all leaders, all followers, and all managers. This includes those on the front lines in entry-level positions and everyone else. The workforce, those who support them, those who lead them at any level. And here's the key point right here to take away from this chapter, chapter 8. Each person's overall level of effectiveness will be determined by their ability to be in the right role at the right time for the right reason in the right way. And the collective effectiveness of the entire team will determine the effectiveness of the organization. So that's why this is critical. Everyone needs to know the difference between leading, following, and managing. Everyone needs to know they are a leader, they are a manager, they are a follower. And they need to know the key to their effectiveness in life, at home and at work, is when in the right role at the right time, for the right reason, in the right way. And that's what leadership development helps facilitate. It helps facilitate people being in the right role at the right time. That comes into intuition. The more you learn about this, the more you apply leadership principles in your life, you develop timing, which is related to intuition. Those two are the hardest principles to teach, timing and intuition. You have to learn a lot of other principles, apply them, and learn from the application in order to hone your timing and your intuition. But when you teach leadership principles, you really focus on those last two components for the right reason and in the right way. You help them understand why and how. For the right reason is why, in the right way is how. So there's a lot of meat in that last statement that I made for you. So a person's character will determine how well they lead, how well they follow, and how well they manage. Think about that. Slow it down right here. I'm sure you can grasp it real easy right now while we're thinking about it and talking about it. A person's character will determine how well they lead, how well they follow, and how well they manage. I talk about all the time is common sense. Common sense will tell you that statement is accurate right there. You don't need a PhD to understand what I just said. Common sense will give you the answer. However, acting on that statement requires uncommon sense. Like I told you, that's chapter 4 out of my Blue Collar Leadership Leading from the Front Lines book. It's about common sense. To actually grow and develop everyone at every level so that they can lead better and follow better and manage better, actually doing that requires uncommon sense. It requires a top leader to have uncommon sense. If you're an individual who doesn't have anyone report to you, you still can understand what I just told you because it only requires common sense. But you're listening to this podcast right now, that's because you have uncommon sense. When you go read any of my books or any of anyone else's books or watch videos or listen to someone else's podcast relative to leadership development, personal growth, that proves you have uncommon sense. Because you could talk to anybody and they'd say, oh yeah, that'd make my life better if I actually learned how to be better. But then they don't do it. So I congratulate you for having uncommon sense to grow and develop yourself. Because leadership development equals character development. Character development equals leadership development. And so now hopefully you can understand why leadership development is so important, because it is character development. Character development is the root of becoming a highly effective individual. So relative to leading and following and managing, one of the key components for being able to do that well is to be able to connect with other people. Your ability to connect is going to increase your ability to influence other people. Following someone when someone else is leading. When you connect with the leader as a follower, you increase your influence. It works both ways. And then when you're managing things and processes and you're interacting with other people, communicating and connecting is a tremendous opportunity to increase your influence. But you got to move beyond communication and actually connect, especially as a leader. And so in this chapter at the end, I referenced Ria's book. Ria has a great book to help with communication, and it's really about connection. But her book is titled Straight Talk, The Power of Effective Communication. She's got a quote on the back cover from Paul Meyer. It says, communication, the human connection, is the key to personal and career success. So her book, Straight Talk, is actually 30 chapters, 3 pages each chapter. And you can download an excerpt from this book and some of Ria's other books. You go to RiaStory, RiaStory.com/download, and you actually can get an excerpt from Straight Talk. But Straight Talk, this book It gives readers 30 easy to read and apply lessons on the principles of effective communication. You'll learn how to connect effectively in order to leverage your communication skills. And you can apply these key lessons that she teaches you to accelerate your career, increase your influence, and enhance your personal and professional relationships. And again, if you don't know Rhea's, my wife, if you don't know her personal story of her having to overcome 7 years of extreme sexual abuse by her father from age 12 to 19, and whatever you have in your mind, I'm telling you, you ain't got a clue what she went through. But she has books, and there's excerpts from some of her books in that same site. You can go to RheaStory.com/TEDx, and watch a 7-minute video of her telling her story. But the reason I'm telling you about her story is when I met her, she could hardly even communicate effectively with people, much less connect, because of the environment she had grown up in. She had been homeschooled her entire life. She hadn't even been out in a public school until she went to get her GED after she escaped from that. When I met Rhea, she was 19. It was still happening to her. A few months later, my intuition told me kind of what was up, and I had enough courage to ask her, and no one had ever asked her. And she trusted me and told me what was happening, and that's the day that it stopped. Never happened again. But the reason I'm telling you, she has grown and developed herself so much. She focuses on leadership development for women, but she's written a whole book on communication and connection. Any of us can learn this stuff. But when you read her book is super powerful when you understand the story that is stacked on top of. Just to share with you some of the chapter titles out of her book. You may want to dive into it, but just read some of them to you. The power of connection. Connection is critical to communication. Connection multiplies communication. Attitude is everything. The early bird gets the influence. Winning the name game. I'm like you. It's okay to like me. Right questions, right answers. Confident, not cocky. Transparent truths. It's not what you say, it's how you say it. I like this one. Your face says it all. Talk with your hands. Your style under stress. Difficult dialogue. Straight talk, resolving conflict. Connecting with a crowd. Telling your story. Those are just some of the titles of the chapters. So if you want to become a better communicator, move beyond communication and become a connector, be sure to check out Straight Talk. So I want to leave you with a quote by Simon Sinek. The strength of the culture, not its size or resources, determines an organization's ability to adapt to the times, overcome adversity, and pioneer new innovations. The strength of the culture is what he's talking about. Not the size of the resources. The strength of the culture. It's pretty powerful. He says it determines an organization's ability to adapt to the times, overcome adversity, pioneer new innovations. Leadership development, character development is at the root of all of that. Hope you enjoyed today's session. Talk to you next time.
Make it happen or someone else will. It might as well be you. Are you serious about taking your career and your life to the next level and beyond? Check out Mack Story's Blue Collar Leadership series books and others, now available on audio, along with paperback and ebooks at Amazon, iTunes, and Audible. Please visit bluecollarleadership.com to learn about Mack's books, programs, special offers, certifications, and more. Thank you for listening to the Blue Collar Leadership Podcast.